Day 50, Part 1. Good afternoon. Jorge decides to live in Brazilian soccer stadium. Jorge asks where the soccer stadium is. He lives in Brazil for a long time. Good afternoon. Jorge decides to live in Brazilian soccer stadium. Jorge asks where the soccer stadium is. He lives in Brazil for a long time. Part 2A. Present. Jorge decides to live in Brazilian soccer stadium. Does Jorge decide to live in a church? Jorge decides to live in a soccer stadium. No, Jorge doesn't decide to live in a church. Where does Jorge decide? He decides to live in a soccer stadium. Jorge decides to live in a soccer stadium. Does Jorge decide to live in school? Does Jorge decide to live in a soccer stadium? Where is Jorge decides to live? He decides to live in a soccer stadium. Does Jorge decide to work in a stadium? Yes, no. Jorge doesn't work he doesn't work in a stadium. He decides to live in a stadium. Part 2B. Pass. Jorge decided to live in Brazilian soccer stadium. Does Jorge decide to live in a church? Jorge decides to live in a soccer stadium. He decided to live in a stadium. Where did Jorge decide? He decides to live in a soccer stadium. Does Jorge decide to live in a school? Jorge decides to live in soccer stadium. Where did Jorge decide to live? In a stadium. Jorge decided to live in a soccer stadium. He decides to work in a stadium. Jorge decides to live in a stadium. Part 3A. Present. Jorge asks where the soccer stadium is. Jorge decides and store drugs is? No. Jorge decides to live in a soccer stadium. He asks where the stadium is. Where does Jorge ask? He asks where the stadium is. Does Jorge ask where the Manuel is? He asks that in stadium is. No, he doesn't. He asks that in stadium is. Who asks? He asks that in stadium is. Part 3b. Pass. Jorge asks where the soccer stadium was. Jorge asked the instructor where was. Jorge asks where the stadium is. He asked when the stadium was. What did Jorge ask? He asked where the stadium was. He asked that. This Jorge asked that does Manuel work? He asked that in stadium is. Was. He asked where the stadium was. Who asked? Jorge asked where in stadium was. Jorge asked where the stadium was. Part 4a. Present. Jorge lives in Brazil for a long time. Does Jorge live in Mexico for a long time? Jorge lived in Brazil for a long time. Jorge doesn't live in Mexico for a long time. He lives in Brazil. How long Jorge lives in Brazil? For a long time. He lives in Brazil for a long time. Does Jorge live in Brazil for 2 years? No, for a long time. He lives in Brazil for a long time. He lives in long time. Does Jorge live in Brazil for a short time? He lives in Brazil for a long time. Where does Jorge live? He lives in Brazil for a long time. Part 4b. Pass. Jorge lives in Brazil for a long time. Did Jorge live in Mexico for a long time? He lives in Brazil for a long time. No, Mexico. Jorge didn't live in Mexico for a long time. How long did Jorge live in Brazil for? For a long time. He lives in Brazil for a long time. Did Jorge live in Brazil for 2 years? He lives in Brazil for a long time. Did Jorge live in Brazil for a short time? He lives in Brazil for a long time. He didn't for short time. He lived for a long time. Where did Jorge live? In Brazil. Jorge lived in Brazil for a long time. In Brazil. He lived in Brazil. Part 5. You, Jorge, traveling to Brazil by plane. You think that the culture there is interesting. Yours good stadium is. You want to practice Portuguese. You want to write better and read better. You're happy to go to Brazil. You think you can improve your Portuguese. You want to live in Brazil forever. Have a nice day. Personal question. What country do you want to live forever? I want to the United States forever.